This is part 2 of my Roy Mustang Glaze Fest, referring to, of course, his get back on the homunculi that slimed out our collective goat, Maes Hughes. Now remember, if you didn't see part 1, go ahead and watch part 1 and come back right here. But if you want to watch this video first, that's cool, that's fine. Drop a like and subscribe, and I'll give you a crash course to catch you up to speed. So boom, Amystris and Ishval had a war, right? We know they had one. But do you remember, it was started when a soldier killed a little girl in broad daylight in a public square for no reason. Well, that soldier that did that was Envy, and in this video, we're gonna focus on lust. But for the sake of argument, Envy's actions led to an entire bloodbath and led to the death of a ridiculous amount of Ishvalan people. But it also provided us with our goat, Scar. Now, obviously Envy is the main enemy because he's the one that dealt the finishing blow on Maes Hughes and also tried the greatest attempt at rage baiting Colonel Mustang. And it didn't end well for him. But Lust is somebody that seems to escape blame just because she's bad. And honestly, she does have a pretty nice figure.
Bitch dependency is no laughing matter.
But that's not enough for her to escape these hands, and Roy Mustang made sure she got exactly what Envy should have got at the end at the very beginning. Now lock in and let's take a deeper dive. Maes Hughes had ended up taking out a map and marked off all the areas where major battles had recently happened, in which case he realized it created one ginormous transmutation circle. So like any goat, he decided, I gotta go tell my man with power, Roy Mustang, because that's the homie and he can get something shaking. But just as he comes to this realization, we see Lust enter the room, and she means business. Being one of the more vocal homunculi and arguably the leader of the coalition that we see with the most screen time, she needs to get Maes Hughes gone to prevent him from potentially ending the plan that has already been set in motion. She immediately goes to whipping out her blades and stabs him through his chest and arm. He still manages to get off a knife strike, and it lands dead center in her forehead and pins her against the wall. Now he thinks this may have killed her, or at least delayed her, which he would be right because it did delay her, but she's certainly not dead. He escapes out of the room and eventually gets slimed out in a telephone booth in the worst way possible by Envy, who was masquerading under the face of his wife. Now where does Lust come back into all of this, you may ask? That's a very good question, because immediately afterward, we see an entire different version of Roy Mustang. Now when they meet up once again, Roy ends up asking Lust if she knows Maes Hughes. She decides to dance around the topic, and he has no time for games, which makes him believe that she had something to do with it regardless. So he unloads the entire clip on her body, but because she shows that she's powered by a Philosopher's Stone, she's able to stop him from ending her life because she has a broken healing factor. An important thing to realize is that Colonel Mustang needs his gloves in order to use his flame powers. However, when his gloves are wet, he can't properly snap or create the flames that he needs to cook literally everybody and everything in sight. Lust, realizing this, as soon as she sees him start to up his glove, she cuts an overhead pipe that drenches both him and his partner, which renders his gloves effectively useless. They then have to take a strategic retreat in order to come up with a new plan, because as we saw, guns, they just don't work on Lust. After realizing after they just left the room that she flooded the room with water, which is H2O, Roy Mustang realizes he can transmute the water into hydrogen gas, and because Jean also has a lighter, they can effectively make a bomb and kill her. Now after they successfully execute the plan, they believe that this is a good time to enter, because this is his first time showing off with Lust. Now it makes sense that flames would be the thing to completely incinerate her and knock her off the map. However, when they go in the room to look for her and see if the Philosopher's Stone's still around to prevent her from regenerating, things get a little bit worse because they take that bad turn. Yes, she was in fact nearly destroyed. However, Jean ended up being the first one to realize she was gone, but wasn't going to allow herself to be forgotten. He ends up getting stabbed by her nails from behind, and just as he calls out for Roy Mustang, he turns around to see the Philosopher's Stone rebuilding her body from start to finish. And I'm not gonna lie, the animation of her body slowly being put back together bit by bit, and every voluptuous curve being put on display showed exactly why she's built so differently.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
But we're not allowed to lust over lust because she killed our guy. She's at the very least part of the reason why he's dead, and that's enough for me. Roy Mustang, after putting her down once again, tries to rip out her Philosopher's Stone, thinking it would prevent her from regenerating. However, she is imbued with the Philosopher's Stone, therefore she is the Philosopher's Stone in essence, which means as soon as he clenched her Philosopher's Stone in his fist, she started regenerating, literally connected to his hand. She then takes her fingers and puts them right through Roy Mustang's kidney area on his left side and leaves him to bleed out on the ground, after taking off his glove as well to prevent him from putting down any more fireworks. She then goes outside to handle Alphonse and Riza, and just as Riza sees her come outside and say that she killed Roy Mustang, she got on timing, completely unloading one clip after another into her body. But like I said before, and as we learned previously, that just don't work. Alphonse then attempts to protect her using his armored frame. However, he doesn't seem to want to go on the offensive, but his armor is just enough to prevent her from reaching through and killing Riza. Riza, however, is literally on the ground in tears and shambles, realizing that she may have lost the Colonel for good. However, just when all hope is lost, Roy Mustang comes out of the corridor as triumphant as ever. Al, realizing what Roy wants to do, immediately pulls up the dirt and tiles on the ground in front of them to create a shield that will protect them, just like an earthbender from Avatar: Last Airbender would. And the next thing you see is Lust turn her head and immediately get fried. She then immediately ends up on all fours, and you think, oh, well, I guess it's over now. But she's not going. She gets up angrier than ever, and then when it pans over to our GOAT, Roy Mustang, you see his side is completely seared shut. But how did he end up doing it? She took away his glove. He didn't have a transmutation circle to perform alchemy with. But wait, what's that on his hand? He didn't. He did. Roy Mustang took his bare hand and carved a transmutation circle into it. The same one that was on his glove he had memorized. He carved it into his bare hand with no painkillers, just so he could run the fate again. He then uses it to sear off the wound and stop himself from bleeding, just so he could get up and return to the fight. He then had the lighter that Jean had previously left within the room and proceeded to use it to switch her down. You see her literally falling down to the floor, laying there, face torn open, bones showing, teeth showing, flesh burnt to a crisp. But she attempts to rise one more time, and he does not back down. He simply ignites it one more time, and you see her screaming out in terrible pain and agony as she is set ablaze. But then she accepts the fact that this is just going to be the way her life comes to an end. Mind you, he realizes that Lust is not the one that actually ended up killing Maes Hughes. However, right after that, he would have his opportunity to get his get back on the genuine problem, Envy. And Envy even came to him. So if you didn't see the first video, this is your opportunity to go back, because that's the one where I cover the most important fight in the show, arguably alongside the ones including the GOAT, Edward Elric, because he's the MC. Now, this is important because Roy Mustang alongside Shikamaru have two of the greatest getbacks in early anime history. And if you made it this far in the video, go and smash the like button, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, and check out the other videos on the channel. But you could also let me know suggestions for other fights and videos you want to see on this channel going forward in the comments below. And as always, yo YC, what you got for me?
She told my baby there's the three. She looked at me and showed a photo. Baby cried, his eyes were like mine. She told my baby there's the three. She looked at me and showed a photo. Baby cried, his eyes were like mine.
Your theme is peace.
Ah!